Texas, the Lone Star State. Bigger than France, bigger than Germany. A land of cowboys and oil, of ancient tribes and bloody battles, of revolution and independence. Texas was once its own country. For almost 10 years, a free republic. Then came the cattle drives, millions of longhorns across the plains. Then everything changed in 1901. Black gold, Texas tea, and today, Texas is a superpower, home to NASA, to tech giants, to 30 million people. But how did it all begin? Let's go back, way back, to the very first Texans. Thousands of years before Europeans arrived, Texas was already home to many nations. The Caddo people lived in the eastern forests. They built permanent villages and farmed the rich soil. In fact, the word Texas comes from the Caddo word Tasha, meaning friends. To the west lived the Apache, fierce warriors who adapted to the harsh desert landscape. They hunted deer and rabbit, gathered plants, and moved with the seasons across hundreds of miles. But no tribe would become more legendary than the Comanche, the lords of the southern plains. The Comanche were the finest horsemen in North America, maybe the finest in the world. Children learned to ride before they could walk. Warriors could shoot 12 arrows while their enemy reloaded one bullet. They followed the great buffalo herds. The buffalo gave them everything they needed: meat for food, hides for clothing and shelter, bones for tools. Nothing was wasted. Life on the plains was hard but rewarding. The tribes lived in balance with nature. Seasons came and went. Generations passed. This was their world, their home. For over 10,000 years, this was Texas. But in 1492, everything began to change. Columbus landed in the Caribbean, and Spain wanted more. In 1519, Spanish explorer Alonso Alvarez de Pineda became the first European to see Texas. He sailed along the Gulf Coast, mapping everything he saw. He claimed all of it for Spain. But the Spanish weren't just looking for land. They were looking for something far more valuable: gold. They had heard incredible legends. 7 cities made entirely of gold, streets paved with treasure, walls covered in jewels. They called them the 7 cities of Cibola. In 1540, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led one of the largest expeditions in history. 300 Spanish soldiers, over 1,000 native allies, horses, cattle, and sheep stretching for miles. They marched north through brutal desert, through the Texas Panhandle, month after month searching for the golden cities. They found nothing but grass. Coronado returned to Mexico in shame. The golden cities were just a legend, a dream that cost Spain a fortune. But Spain didn't give up on Texas. If there was no gold to take, they would try something different. They would build missions, convert the natives, claim the land through faith. Catholic priests would teach Christianity to the native people. In return, they would become loyal Spanish subjects, work Spanish land, follow Spanish rules. That was the plan. In 1718, the Spanish founded their most important Texas mission, San Antonio de Valero. Today we know it by a different name, the Alamo. More missions followed: San Jose, Concepcion, Espada. Each one a small piece of Spain planted in the Texas wilderness. But the native tribes weren't interested in becoming Spanish, especially the Comanche. They saw exactly what the missions really were: a way to steal their land and destroy their way of life. War erupted. For over 100 years, the Comanche and the Spanish fought bloody battles across Texas. Raid after raid, revenge after revenge. The Comanche won most of those battles. Spain could never defeat them. The lords of the plains were too fast, too fierce, too skilled. After 300 years of trying, Spain was exhausted. Their empire was crumbling. And in 1821, Mexico declared independence. Suddenly, Texas had a new owner. Mexico was free, and they had big dreams for their northern territory. But those dreams would soon turn into a nightmare. Mexico had just won its freedom from Spain, a brand new nation with brand new ideas. But they had inherited a big problem. Texas was almost completely empty. Mexicans didn't want to move there. It was too far, too dangerous. The Comanche still controlled most of the land. So Mexico came up with a bold plan. They would invite Americans to settle Texas instead. A young man named Stephen F. Austin received a special deal. He could bring 300 American families to Texas. In exchange, they would become Mexican citizens, follow Mexican law, and convert to Catholicism. Word spread fast across America. Cheap land in Texas, almost free. A fresh start for anyone brave enough to take it. And they came, thousands of them. Families packed everything they owned into covered wagons and headed west. Farmers, craftsmen, dreamers, and adventurers, all looking for a better life. They built farms along the rivers. Small towns appeared. Schools, churches, general stores. Within just a few years, the empty wilderness was transforming into something new. Stephen F. Austin became known as the father of Texas, but there was a problem growing beneath the surface. Most Americans had no intention of actually becoming Mexican. They spoke English, not Spanish. They were Protestant, not Catholic. They followed American customs, not Mexican laws. By 1830, something shocking had happened. Americans outnumbered Mexicans in Texas by 10 to 1. Texas was Mexican territory filled with Americans. Mexico City grew alarmed. Their plan had backfired. Instead of Americans becoming Mexican, Texas was becoming American. They had invited a problem they couldn't control. Mexico took action. In 1830, they banned all new American immigration. They sent soldiers to Texas, raised taxes, demanded the settlers follow Mexican law for real this time. The Texans were furious. They had cleared the land, built the farms, fought off the Comanche. This was their home now, and nobody was going to tell them what to do. Then things got worse, much worse. A new leader seized power in Mexico, General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. He called himself the Napoleon of the West. He was a dictator, and he had plans for Texas. Santa Anna threw out the Mexican Constitution. No more democracy, no more rights. He would rule with absolute power. Anyone who resisted would be crushed. For the Texans, this was the final straw. They had come to Texas for freedom, and now a dictator wanted to take it away. There was only one answer. In October 1835, the first shots were fired at the town of Gonzales. The Texans raised a flag with a simple message: come and take it. The Texas Revolution had begun, and Santa Anna was coming, with the largest army Mexico had ever assembled. Santa Anna marched north with 6,000 soldiers, the largest army Mexico had ever assembled. His mission was simple: crush the rebellion, kill every rebel, erase Texas. In San Antonio, fewer than 200 Texans gathered at an old Spanish mission called the Alamo. They knew the army was coming. They knew they were outnumbered 30 to 1, but they refused to run. Among them were legends. Jim Bowie, the famous knife fighter, now sick with typhoid. William Barrett Travis, the young commander who would rather die than surrender. And Davy Crockett, the Tennessee frontiersman who came to Texas looking for adventure. When the Mexican army arrived, it surrounded the Alamo completely. There was no escape. Santa Anna raised a blood-red flag. It meant no mercy, no prisoners. Everyone inside would die. Travis wrote a letter to the world. He addressed it to the people of Texas and all Americans. He wrote victory or death. He would never surrender or retreat. He called for help that would never come. According to legend, Travis drew a line in the sand with his sword. Anyone who would stay and fight to the death, step across. Every single man crossed that line. For 13 days they held, exhausted, starving, waiting for reinforcements that never came. On the cold morning of March 6, 1836, the final assault began. Before dawn, thousands of Mexican soldiers attacked from every direction. The defenders fought like demons. For every Texan that fell, they took 10 Mexicans with them. But there were simply too many. Within 90 minutes, it was over. All the defenders were dead. Bowie, Travis, Crockett. All of them. The Alamo had fallen. Santa Anna thought he had won. He thought Texas was finished. He was wrong. The Alamo was not a defeat. It was a rallying cry. Remember the Alamo? The word spread across Texas like wildfire. Men grabbed their rifles and rode to join Sam Houston's army. Farmers, lawyers, shopkeepers, all of them hungry for revenge. 6 weeks later, Houston found his chance. Santa Anna's army was camped at San Jacinto, taking their afternoon siesta. They never saw it coming. The Texans charged, screaming, Remember the Alamo? The battle lasted 18 minutes. 18 minutes to destroy an empire's dreams. Over 600 Mexican soldiers killed. The Texan army lost 9 men. Santa Anna himself was captured the next day, hiding in tall grass, wearing a private's uniform. The Napoleon of the West, brought before Sam Houston like a common prisoner. Texas had won. Against all odds, against the most powerful army in Mexico, a few hundred farmers and frontiersmen had created something new. The Republic of Texas, an independent nation, free. Texas wasn't just free. Texas was a country, the Republic of Texas, with its own president, its own army, its own flag with that famous Lone Star. Sam Houston became the first president. The man who won San Jacinto now had to build a nation from nothing. No money, no real government, and Mexico still wanted them dead. But people believed in Texas. They came from everywhere. Americans, Germans, Czechs, Irish, all of them chasing the dream of free land and a fresh start. Towns sprang up across the prairie. Austin became the new capital, named after Stephen F. Austin, the father of Texas, who died just months after independence. He never saw his dream fully realized. The Republic had big problems, though. Mexico refused to recognize Texas independence. They launched raids across the border. The threat of another invasion was constant, and the Comanche, the lords of the southern plains. They saw these new Texans as invaders on their land, and they were absolutely right. The Texas Rangers were formed to protect the frontier. Tough men on fast horses, carrying the new Colt revolvers, they became legendary and feared. For 9 years, Texas stood alone, a tiny republic surrounded by dangers. But Texans had always wanted to join the United States. Now finally, America was ready to say yes. On December 29, 1845, Texas became the 28th state. The Lone Star joined the Stars and Stripes, but Texas negotiated special terms. They would always be different. Mexico was furious. They had never accepted Texas independence. Now America had stolen their territory. War was coming. The Mexican-American War erupted in 1846. American troops, including many Texans, hungry for revenge, marched south. This time they wouldn't stop at the Rio Grande. America won completely. Mexico lost half its territory. California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado. The map of North America was redrawn forever. Texas was safe now. No more Mexican threats. The state began to grow. Cotton plantations spread across East Texas. And with cotton came something darker. Slavery. Texas had been a slave state from the beginning. When America began tearing itself apart over the question of slavery, Texas would have to choose a side. In 1861, Texas voted to leave the United States. They joined the Confederacy. Sam Houston, now the governor, refused to swear loyalty to the rebellion. They removed him from office. Texans fought for the Confederacy across the South. They were known as fierce soldiers. But Texas itself saw little combat. The war's destruction mostly spared the state. The Confederacy lost. On June 19, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston. They announced that all slaves were finally free. We now celebrate that day as Juneteenth. Texas was defeated, occupied by Union troops, forced to rejoin the nation they had tried to leave. But Texans are stubborn. They would rebuild, and they would become more Texan than ever. After the Civil War, Texas had a problem. Millions of longhorn cattle roaming wild across the plains, and up north, cities full of hungry people willing to pay good money for beef. The solution was simple but crazy. Walk the cattle north, 1,000 miles to the railroad towns of Kansas, 3 months through wilderness, rivers, and Comanche territory. The cowboys who rode these trails became American legends. But forget what Hollywood told you. 1 in 3 cowboys was Mexican. 1 in 4 was black. This was no white man's story. They learned everything from the Mexican vaqueros, the lasso, the rodeo, the saddle, the chaps. Even the word buckaroo comes from vaquero. The cowboy was Mexican first. A cattle drive meant 3 months in the saddle, 15 miles a day, eating dust behind 2,000 longhorns. It was brutal, dangerous work. River crossings were deadly. Push 2,000 panicked cattle into a swollen river, and men would drown. Whole herds could be lost in minutes to the current. At night, they feared the stampede. One crack of thunder, one spooked horse, and 2,000 cattle would run blind in the darkness. Cowboys died trying to turn stampedes, but when they finally reached Kansas, it was all worth it. A cowboy earning $30 a month suddenly had $90 in his pocket, and the wild cattle towns were waiting. The cattle towns were legendary: Dodge City, Abilene, Wichita. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp tried to keep drunk cowboys from shooting up the town every Saturday night. Back in Texas, cattle barons built empires. The King Ranch covered more land than Rhode Island. These ranchers became the new royalty of Texas. But the open range couldn't last forever. Barbed wire changed everything. Suddenly you could fence the endless prairie. The free-roaming days were ending. By 1890, the great cattle drives were finished. Railroads reached Texas directly. No need to walk cattle 1,000 miles. The cowboy era was over, but the legend was just beginning. The cowboy became something more than a worker. He became a symbol: freedom, independence, wide open spaces, the American dream on horseback. Rodeos kept the old skills alive: bull riding, bronco busting, roping, and barrel racing. What was once daily work became celebration. Texas still crowns rodeo champions every year. The cowboy boot, the cowboy hat, the western shirt with pearl snaps. These aren't costumes in Texas. They're identity. You don't need a horse to dress like you could ride one, and ranching never stopped. Texas still has more cattle than any other state: 12 million head. The beef business that built Texas is still going strong today. The cowboy gave Texas its soul, that spirit of independence, that willingness to ride into the unknown, that stubborn refusal to quit no matter how hard the trail gets. Even today, when Texans face a challenge, they think like cowboys: saddle up, get it done, don't complain. That's the Texas way. And it all started on those dusty cattle trails heading north to Kansas. January 10th, 1901. A small hill in southeast Texas called Spindletop. A drilling crew had been trying for months to find oil. Most people thought they were crazy. Then the ground started to shake. A rumble from deep below. Mud shot up from the hole. Then the drill pipe itself launched into the sky like a rocket. And then came the oil. The Lucas Gusher shot oil 200 feet into the air. 100,000 barrels a day. More oil than anyone had ever seen. More oil than the entire rest of America produced combined. Word spread instantly. Within weeks, thousands of people flooded into Beaumont. Roughnecks, gamblers, businessmen, dreamers, anyone who wanted to get rich quick. Spindletop became a forest of wooden derricks, hundreds of them crammed together, pumping black gold around the clock. It was chaos. It was dangerous. It was the future. Some men became millionaires overnight. Farmers who couldn't pay their mortgages suddenly owned oil wells worth fortunes. Texas was transforming from cattle kingdom to oil empire. Houston saw the opportunity. The city built a ship channel to the Gulf of Mexico. Suddenly, Houston could export oil to the entire world. The energy capital of Earth was born. Oil was found everywhere: the Permian Basin in West Texas, the Panhandle, East Texas. Every few years, another massive discovery. Texas was floating on an ocean of black gold. The oil companies became giants: Texaco, Gulf Oil, Humble Oil, which became Exxon. These Texas companies would dominate global energy for the next century. The Roughnecks did the real work: drilling in brutal heat, 12-hour shifts, dangerous equipment that could kill you in a second. They built Texas with their sweat and blood. Oil money transformed Texas: schools, roads, hospitals. The University of Texas became rich beyond imagination when oil was discovered on its land. That money still funds education today. World War II made Texas even more important. American tanks and planes ran on Texas oil. Without Texas, the Allies couldn't have won. The state became essential to national survival. After the war, Texas oil men became legendary: H.L. Hunt, Clint Murchison, Sid Richardson. They were wildcatters who became billionaires. Larger-than-life Texas personalities. Houston grew into a world city. Glass skyscrapers rose from the prairie. By the 1970s, Houston was the energy capital of planet Earth. Every major oil company had offices there. There were busts too. When oil prices crashed, Texas crashed with them. The 1980s were brutal, banks failed, fortunes vanished, but Texas always came back. Texas learned to diversify: technology, medicine, finance. But oil never stopped mattering. The Permian Basin boom of the 2000s made Texas the biggest oil producer in America again. Today, Texas produces more oil than most countries, more than Iraq, more than Kuwait. If Texas were a nation, it would be one of the top oil producers on Earth. Oil made modern Texas possible: every highway, every school, every gleaming skyscraper. It all traces back to that January morning in 1901 when black gold shot into the Texas sky and changed everything forever. 1961. President Kennedy made a bold promise. America would put a man on the moon before the decade ended, and he chose Texas to make it happen. NASA built Mission Control in Houston. The Johnson Space Center became the nerve center of American space exploration. Every moonshot would be guided from Texas soil. July 20th, 1969. The whole world watched, and the first words from the moon came to Houston. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Neil Armstrong's words echoed around the world, and Houston was there for every second of it. But Texas also knew tragedy. November 22nd, 1963, Dallas. President Kennedy was assassinated. The nation mourned. Texas mourned with them. Texas found healing in football. Friday night lights became religion, and the Dallas Cowboys became America's team. Texas football was bigger than life itself. The cities exploded. Dallas built gleaming towers. Houston sprawled across the prairie. San Antonio embraced its Mexican heritage. Austin stayed weird and wonderful. Millions came from Mexico, seeking better lives. They brought their culture, their food, their music. Texas became a beautiful blend of Anglo and Latino traditions. Tex-Mex was born. Texas music shaped the world. Willie Nelson, Buddy Holly, Selena, Beyonce. From country to rock to Tejano to R&B, Texas gave the world its soundtrack. Then came the tech revolution. Austin transformed into Silicon Hills. Dell, Texas Instruments. Soon, California tech giants moved their headquarters to Texas. A new boom had begun. Elon Musk built his rocket factory in South Texas. SpaceX launches from Boca Chica. Texas went from sending men to the moon to building the ships that will take humans to Mars. But Texas still faces nature's fury. Hurricane Harvey in 2017 devastated Houston, the worst rainstorm in American history. But Texans rescued Texans. Neighbors helped neighbors. The Cajun Navy came from Louisiana. Volunteers drove from across America. It didn't matter where you were from. In a crisis, Texas brings out the best in people. Today, Texas is an economic superpower. If it were its own country, Texas would have the 8th largest economy on Earth, bigger than Brazil, bigger than Canada. Nearly 30 million people call Texas home. It's the 2nd largest state in America, and it's still growing faster than almost anywhere else. Texas is Hispanic ranchers whose families have been here for 300 years. It's tech workers who arrived last month. It's Vietnamese fishermen on the Gulf Coast. It's everyone. The challenges are real. Border debates never end. Climate brings floods and droughts. Politics divides cities and countryside. But that's always been Texas too. But through it all, there's something special about Texas. A pride, a spirit, a belief that anything is possible if you're willing to work for it. The frontier spirit never died. From the ancient peoples who first called this land home to the dreamers arriving today, Texas has always been about one thing: the freedom to build your own destiny. They came for land, for gold, for oil, for opportunity, for freedom. Each generation built on what came before. Each generation made Texas more than it was. And the story isn't over. Not even close. Right now, somewhere in Texas, someone is drilling a new well, starting a new company, writing a new song, dreaming a new dream. That's Texas, wild and civilized, Traditional and revolutionary, humble and boastful, a place where the past is honored and the future is built. The Lone Star State. There's nowhere else quite like it.